Good afternoon. I am Dr. Tiffany Slater, CEO and Senior Human Resources Consultant for HR Tailor Made. And joining me today to talk about all things inclusive workplaces is Dr. Lynnea Brumbaugh of Quantum Empowerment Academy. Welcome, Lynnea.
Thank you, Tiffany. It's so good to see you again.
So good to see you as well. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I usually jump on here and just have a quick chat about whatever the topic of the day is and just do a good 5-10 minutes. But I thought chatting with you might be a little more interesting than just listening to me go on and on. So I'm really want to know, first of all, what does Quantum Empowerment Academy do?
Quantum Empowerment Academy helps leaders to live and lead from this present moment. Like that's
Mhm.
really the bottom line.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And that, I often talk about leadership and how important it is to. Um, it's probably the most important factor of creating a workplace where people want to stay. And so, as you think about leadership and inclusive cultures, how do those work together from your perspective?
You can't, I don't know, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
And then you can't have a really good leadership unless you have an inclusive culture, and your culture will not be inclusive unless you have a fairly conscious leader who's done some awareness work. Yes,
Mhm.
as we know, the the environment of any organization, it um, it stems from the actual leadership,
Mhm.
and you can feel it all the way down the organization, even if you've never met the leader.
Yeah. And so Lynette, what does that look like? I mean, we talk about leaders impacting the environment, but what really does that look like? Like if we have a leader who doesn't engage with their team members because they have perhaps a VP of operations or a VP of operations, someone who just does everything. What does it mean for the CEO to be the person that's stuck in the office all the time and doesn't necessarily engage with their team? How does that create or impact the environment?
Well, actually, I'm going to ask you are we wanting to focus in specifically on diversity, equity, inclusion, or is this in general? How would you like me to approach
However, I think I don't know that you can separate the two.
that?
So
Exactly.
yes.
Okay. So, so the more that a leader is in contact only with the team, or their immediate, like only the people that they get to see all the time, the less they actually interact with the people who are doing the work of the organization, the more assumptions that leader is going to bring to their decision making that may or may not be informed by actual reality. Um,
Mhm.
One example, um, if you have a leader who is, like most leaders, white and male, and the assumption that leader makes when they, come into an environment is at some level informed by whatever their experience is. So they may come into an environment and go, "Hey, we're gonna have a party after work," and the reality of the actual employees are, I got to pick up my kids. Like, I actually don't have time to go and work, to go to the party after work because I have other obligations. And if that leader has not been having actual conversations about what the real lived sort of biological experience is. And when I say biological experience, I mean like this is what my living body
Yeah.
needs to do with my life energy. And I have obligations that are really important. And I have ways that my life has been informed because of the body that I live in,
Yeah.
that you don't know unless you have made a real effort to understand what it is to walk in my skin.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important. A really important fact or point that you made about the leader needing to engage with their people to really have a good understanding of who it is that they have on their team
Mm-hmm.
and what supporting them looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. And so when you work with individuals who don't see that there is a need to highlight or understand or embrace diversity as a movement in their organization, how have you seen that impact overall business?
What I have more often seen is actually a desire to embrace diversity because that's what we're supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and an inability to understand what that
Yeah.
really means.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the most useful places that we can go when we start to talk about this is really that subtle difference between diversity and inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
because we can, make decisions to diversify a workplace, and to try to bring in people who look different, different ages, different sexes, different genders, whatever, different races, and then that doesn't mean that people are going to have an equitable experience. And so how that plays out is that the people who are already possibly at a disadvantage in the workplace are burdened with the additional work of explaining and teaching and training the people around them
Yeah.
about, well, no, this doesn't actually work
Yeah.
because it's designed for somebody who is not me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, Lene. It's really good. And I often talk about how creating an inclusive work culture it's a big deal. It is a big deal. And it has to start with the recruitment process because you have to, if you want a diverse environment, you have to look in diverse places. You have to be very intentional about the way you go about sourcing your talent, about the way you go about selecting your people. It doesn't mean that you say, I'm going to hire all Black people. That's not what it means. It means that I'm going to make sure that the questions I ask truly display our desire and interest in having a diverse group of individuals on our team.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, because what people think that that means, that if we're going to recruit, okay, so let's start with recruitment and be diverse. What they think it might mean is, okay, so here's the list of questions, like here's how we mix it up and check off some boxes, and it really doesn't work. Like, that will never work. it has to it has to become this ongoing process. It's never a one and done.
Yeah.
We want organizations to build into their DNA that we don't know what we think we know about other human beings, and
Absolutely.
that when we make assumptions about what, yeah,
Yes,
and when we
that,
make those, yeah, go ahead.
I was just
We're having a time delay.
I was just gonna say that's really important that we don't know what we think we know about other human beings. I like that.
Yeah, and when we make assumptions, which we all do, like we all make assumptions, we can't help it. Um, when we make assumptions, we need to train ourselves and to make it normal to compassionately question our own assumptions and to do this publicly and in everyday discussions all the time. Wait, I'm is this an I think that I don't know what I'm talking about right now, or I feel like there may be a gray area here that I need some clarity on. Or we gently
Yeah.
call each other on our stuff when somebody says something that is uncomfortable, unkind, whatever. We have the ouch vocabulary. Ouch. Can we talk about that? These are all tools that we can actually have to start getting very real, very, very real with the lived experiences of all the people in the organization, because ultimately that's going to make your organizations function so
Yeah.
much better, so much
It
better.
does. And you know, it makes people want to stay there. It makes people feel as though, hey, I feel good being here. I don't remember exactly where I was, but there was it's gonna drive me crazy. I can't remember where I was, but I was the only person of color. Um and I didn't even recognize it until I left. That's inclusion.
Whoa, that
That's inclusion.
yes,
That is me feeling so comfortable, so safe, so much a part of the group that I don't even recognize that I'm different. That's inclusion.
that feels like should be the aspiration.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, that is aspirational goals, which is not the same thing as quote like the old-fashioned 80s way of being colorblind,
yeah,
which sort of white people were taught to do. And I was one of those white people. I thought that that's what we were supposed to do, so I tried to do it,
sure.
which is insane,
Yeah,
because it's not about the person who is in the dominant position. It's about the people who traditionally their lived experience is to come into environments and feel like an other, somebody who doesn't fit in, right? And what you just said is, oh yeah, that wasn't my experience. So boom, like yeah, that's what we want.
yes, absolutely. And it felt great. I mean, just thinking about it, I was like, that's what it's supposed to feel like every single time, every single time. And I have to,
Yes.
Lynnea, since I started my business, I vowed to never put myself in a position where I was going to be the only again, and especially not pay for it. I'm not going to pay for it. So when I am in spaces like that and I don't even recognize it, I'm winning. They're
Sweet.
doing
That's
something right.
absolutely. I
That's
love it.
awesome. So good. So, what would you recommend to business owners that, as it relates to creating an inclusive environment, whatever that means to you, whatever inclusion means, or whatever group of people you're thinking of? I'm thinking everybody.
Mhm.
What does creating an inclusive work environment for everyone? What does that look like for you?
I wish I knew. I mean, that this about makes me cry because every organization that I have been in has had an aspiration to have that be the case, and it never is.
Mhm.
So I think that like really and truly going back to understanding that this is a never ending process, at least for the foreseeable future, and building that process of I don't know, like an evolution of your own awareness into all the systems, so that when you have quarterly meetings or what, like there's some way in which, as you're doing all of the assessments, there are also, you know, the accountability bits.
Mhm.
There is the 360-degree communication, and it's specifically about how our how are our people doing? Do they feel like they are included? Do they feel that sense of belonging here? And if not, is it safe for them to say that they don't?
Yeah.
Because that is usually not safe.
Yeah, I agree.
So we probably need to start with, how do we make it super safe for people to say what their truth is?
Yeah. One of the things that we do at HR Tailor Made for our clients on an annual basis, we do stay interviews. And essentially, we're trying to answer the question, if you were to leave, what would be the reason? And so, in those conversations, we are
Mm.
able to gather the details as it relates to, is this an inclusive place? And what would make it inclusive? So, I would encourage every leader or every organization to engage in stay interviews, and don't do them yourself. Have an outside party to conduct them, or do it anonymously, so
Mhm.
that you can be sure that you are really getting good information, and pull it all together, summarize it all, feed it back to your team members, and tell them what you're going to do about it, and actually do it.
And then actually do it, right, exactly. Now, I love that. What better way to make people feel safe if they do something like what you have exactly just outlined? I think that is brilliant.
Mhm.
And I think that probably almost everybody who's listening to this says, "Oh, I would love to answer that question." I would love, I like, who would not love to answer that question? And
Yeah.
so I think that is utterly brilliant. And there was something else that was in my brain that's gone now. So let's just move on.
Yes. Well, you know what? I think we've kind of, hit some really important pointers about inclusive culture. We talked about what it means. We've talked about some of the ways that we can find out if we have one. And we've talked about what leaders can do to make sure that they create an inclusive culture. The one thing we haven't talked about is, what can team members do to make
Oh,
sure that they are contributing to an inclusive work environment? What do you think, Lynnea?
that is such a good question. Yeah, that is a fantastic question. Um, because, like, in real life, not everybody on a team has buy in about inclusivity. And so, if you are a person who has buy in, you probably already have some of the skills that you need, becoming curious, trying to understand, you know, what you're actually saying and what I'm actually thinking, working with those assumptions. If you don't have buy-in, then there is there's that time period in which you can try to coach somebody up and sort of help them to understand. And in an environment where the leadership actually understands the importance of this, you have to be willing to let people go who won't be coached up into buying into a reality in which this is how this company functions. This is in alignment with our values and in alignment with our mission, and it just makes all things go more smoothly, and it makes us a better place to work. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the bottom line here is, it has to be our DNA. It has to be, because it starts with the recruitment process. It's all about the images that we put out there on social media, literal images. Are they, do they show diversity? Do they show that we value the issues that impact all individuals, all human beings? Do we celebrate the wins of all types of individuals? And then, bringing it home to the individuals that work in the organization, some of the things that, I think are really important for them to do as team members is to advocate for each other. When we see that a person is not being treated fairly, we should advocate for them, because how many of us would want other people to advocate for us when the
it,
time was right?
that is huge. It is so huge. And if you are a person who's lucky enough to have your manager, your immediate supervisor sees you and can advocate for you, advocate for you up the chain, then that is actually what you want. And that is what the leadership should want as well. I don't know this. Perhaps I'm in an organization that there's no way I could know the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. But I can build systems where I'm hiring the people who are really seeing what's going on. And there's a system to make sure that those that we take it seriously. We take it seriously, the viewpoints and the perspectives of the people who see what's actually going on.
Yep, I love it. Well, that's all I think we can leave them with, Lynnea.
All right.
That was a great conversation, and I think we hit some really, really important points. And so, thank you all for tuning in. You know how to reach us if you have any questions, hrtailormade.com, or you can inbox me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Let me know what questions you have for me or Dr. Lynnea Brumbaugh, and we will get you a response, because this is really important for us, creating an inclusive work environment, not just for the people on your team, but for the excellence and the success of your organization. Inclusive work environments make people want to stay. And that's what we're all about at HR TaylorMade, creating joyful work experiences. Thank you so much. Check us out, hrtailormade.com. Sign up for the newsletter, and check out Dr. Lynnea Brumbaugh at quantumempowermentacademy.com. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.